is better than nothing.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Squat Cobbler. I'm Mike. You can find me at Official Pagan on everything.
And at least for the time being, I'm Kelly Toole at KELLYTHUL on Twitter.
Now, Kelly, if anyone doesn't know, we do record these episodes back to back. We do a recommendation show and an Alice Cooper show, typically in one recording session. So Kelly's a little bit shell-shocked still from our previous episode of Squat Cobbler. If you're not familiar, go back and check that out. You might want to check it out on YouTube first. I have a feeling it'll be slightly different if you listen to it on iTunes. So if you're easily offended, hit the YouTube version. For everybody else, check it out on iTunes or check it out on the blog.
Setting the bar a little high there, that it's only the easily offended that might want to go that way. I think you should stay away from the iTunes one. Just stay away from it.
Has there ever been a better reason to check something out than somebody telling you shouldn't do it?
That's just my suggestion.
All right, so we're here to talk about Alice Cooper. So you're in a safe space, Kelly. You can relax and breathe and get in the Alice and know that you're in a safe place and nothing crazy can happen here.
Of course not. That's exactly how I feel right now.
So we're here talking about Hey Stoopid. This is the album that follows up Trash, which if you listen to our last review, I think you're going to hear some repetitive stuff here.
I think we talked about some albums that paired up pretty heavily. The first two albums, of course, Trash and this one, and then later Dragon Town and Brutal Planet. So, but yeah, this is the coupling of kind of Trash and Hey Stoopid came out fairly close together, and not thematically, well, I guess maybe a teeny bit thematically linked, but just kind of in terms of the nature of the music, very much linked. And then what I'm kind of super excited about is after this album, I had to kind of prep for this, to kind of go back. Everything else from here on out, I listened to with great regularity and I'm super familiar with and can go in. But this was one that we'll get through it and talk about the review, but it's not one that gets a lot of repeat listens for me. So I had to kind of refamiliarize myself with a number of the songs. But from here on out, I do not have that problem.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. From here out, I'm really familiar with everything. This is a record that for me didn't really get a ton of play. I think I had mentioned on the previous episode, my introduction to Alice Cooper was through my dad's records. He had all of the Cooper group records, except for the first two, The Dark Years, up through Alice's first solo album, Welcome to My Nightmare. And then he really didn't have much after that, maybe like a greatest hits album or something like that of the solo stuff beyond Welcome to My Nightmare. We're familiar with a lot of that stuff. I had to kind of discover that on my own. Similar thing to when I got into Black Sabbath, my dad only had the early Ozzy records, so I kind of discovered everything that came after that on my own. So when I first started thinking about delving in Alice Cooper, the first thing I was really exposed to was Trash, and particularly Poison being on TV all the time on MTV. And I had a really hard time as a kid wrapping my head around the fact that that's the same Alice Cooper from the Alice Cooper group records. I didn't really understand what, radio play was, or striving for commercial success, or selling out, or any of those things were foreign concepts to a little kid. But as we discussed, Trash was a hugely commercially successful record for Alice. As far as we can tell, the best-selling album of his solo career, and it seems to be the best-selling album of his career total, even counting the Alice Cooper group records. So it makes sense that, he would want to continue in that same vein. If it's not broke, don't fix it kind of thing. And this definitely continues in the same vein.
Yeah, it does. It does not reach the same commercial success as Trash did, but it's in the same vein. And if you were kind of thrown off balance by Trash, this keeps you kind of in that same basic space for there. And I think what you're going to hear from us this album is very similar to what you heard last album, which is these aren't bad songs. They don't feel 100% Alice, and it's a slightly different, but there's some moments in this album that I really like. So
yeah, there's definitely some highlights here, and I'm even going to say, and this is a little bit of a spoiler, but I'm even going to say that there's more highlights to me in this than there was on Trash. Not to say that this is a substantially better record right off the bat, because they are so similar. The biggest difference I would say is that this is less of a Desmond Child record because he didn't produce it and only has writing credits on 2 or 3 songs, I believe.
I think just, 2.
It's less of a Desmond Child record in that sense, but I mean, we're really treading a lot of the same ground. All the way to the fact that It's even overloaded with guest artists the same way the Trash was. So before we even get into anything, since I already kind of brought this up, when you see an album with a lot of guest artists on it, like do you like that, or are you just, whether it's Alice or anyone else, but we used Alice as an example since we're just speaking of him particularly. When you pick up an Alice album, are you excited to hear how he collaborates with these artists, or are you disappointed because you were just buying the ticket for Alice?
To a degree, it depends on who the guests are. So if it's other people I'm pretty fired up about in one respect or another, then I'm pretty cool with it. If it's folks that I have less of enthusiasm for, kind of pulls me the other way. I don't get kind of a visceral reaction one way or another if there was something loaded up with a lot of folks on there. It really, like I said, it really depends on who they are. Some of the Harry Nilsson albums from way back in the day, he would load it up with quite the rogues gallery of whether it's John Lennon, Keith Moon would join in for some of his stuff, and it was all very, very cool that way. So it depends on who. This particular crew that's on here, there's not a lot of bell ringers for me in terms of folk that I have as equal or even close to as much passion for as I do for Alice. But to me, it always depends on who those guest stars are. In general, if I'm buying an Alice Cooper album, I want to hear mostly Alice, but I'm cool with a decent number of guest stars, but I kind of like them to be guest stars that I like.
Which makes perfect sense. For me personally, I kind of like it, seeing artists collaborate, especially if it's an artist you wouldn't necessarily head if they're able to pull off a collaboration that on paper seems weird. The only thing with me, we saw this with Trash, and he's worked with other people before, but we saw that situation with Trash where most of the songs on the album had a lot of guest artists on it. I really wasn't in love with Trash, not to say it's a bad album, but coming into this, we've already seen another pairing from Alice. Into this right off the bat that we're going to see another pairing even before I listen to any of it. See a lot of guest artists on here. P to the logo from Trash, this, which I mentioned when we did the Trash review, I actually really like that sort of stylized Alice Cooper logo with the title through it.
The text treatment or the lockup with the Alice Cooper and the title, which is a carryover from the Trash, I thought was cool as well. I think it's one of the best approaches. There's been several different ways kind of Alice Cooper, the words Alice Cooper have been depicted on Alice albums in a stylized way. I think this is the cleanest and strongest. The cover itself, beyond the logo treatment, if you will, is it's this explosion of skulls and color. And I think the original plan, because as we get into the music in itself, Hey Stoopid was the idea of Alice wanting to create the We Are the World for heavy metal group collaboration around an anti-suicide song. And so there was some thought initially to have, there's all kinds of things around the skull with Alice Cooper makeup on this cover. But one of the earlier iterations is those things were going to be things like syringes and pills. And then they kind of dialed that back a little bit. But it's a very bright, color intense cover that in the scheme of things I'm okay with. I like it better than the Trash cover, but it's not one of my favorite Alice covers.
Yeah, that's kind of the same way I am. It is visually more interesting than Trash is, because Trash to me is kind of an awkward cover, and we had touched on this, like the bedazzled leather jacket that seems very ill-fitting on Alice. You're not seeing his face. You're not seeing the iconic makeup. The T-shirt thing's kind of cool, but it would have been more cool if we saw his face or something along those lines. And it just didn't work for me. So even though this is a bit much, like it's kind of a noisy cover, there's, in my opinion, too much going on in it. I still love the logo the same way I love the logo on Trash. I believe that was used on a couple of the singles from these albums, and it was used on, there was a tour video that came out that had that logo as well. I think it'd be really cool. I know this is getting slightly off topic. I think it'd be really cool if they brought this logo back. I would love an Alice Cooper t-shirt with that sort of stylized logo for one of the more recent albums.
Yeah, and there's no reason they couldn't. This could easily be brought forward and connected to any of the albums. It's flexible. They've done, I don't know, it's not been as consistent, but there's been a kind of a more dripping paint, dripping blood lettering Alice Cooper that they've used on several of the albums recently. Dragontown and Brutal Planet kind of carried a very similar text treatment to it, but this one's to me the most solid. I do think it's a really cool one, and I hope it makes a comeback because it is very, very cool. It'd be a fantastic t-shirt.
I would love to see, especially something like Brutal Planet or Dragontown, have a great shirt, or maybe even like a vinyl reissue of those with that type of logo on it. I think that would lend itself really well to it. If you notice, I'm already talking around the album.
Yeah.
more so than about the album itself. Well, you already kind of brought it. You talked about the theme of Hey Stoopid and what this album cover was originally meant to be. It's kind of surprised to me that in 1991 they decided to dial that significantly back. I can't imagine, even if you're Alice Cooper, even if you're coming off a huge record like Trash, I can't imagine stores being okay, regardless of the context. Can't imagine big chain stores being okay with an album at that time with pills and syringes and things like that on the cover.
Yeah, and I think Alice at this point is kind of in the mode too of, you know, his comeback started with Constrictor, starting to see some success and interest build back up. Tours were starting to do better. Trash is just, you know, very strongest commercial success yet. Probably not predisposed to have a cover that kind of locks him out of mass retailers.
Yeah, it was whoever made the call to scale back that album cover made the right call. Even today, like I would never, ever, ever compare myself to Alice Cooper. But like even today, my own band has run into issues with album cover art at major stores like iTunes and things like that. Like we've had issues where in certain territories they won't show our album covers. And that's happened on 3 of our releases. And I would say there's nothing as extreme as an album covered in pills and needles and stuff like that. Now, granted, obviously, we are nowhere near the level of notoriety as somebody like Alice Cooper, but I would have to imagine that in 1991, even someone with his notoriety, that would not fly.
Yeah, and I would agree that it was the right call.
Well, that does bring us into the first song, Hey Stoopid. What are your thoughts on this one, sir?
So, you know, the intent was to kind of create that anti-suicide anthem, which you got to give props to. I think that a good subject matter to kind of hit a little bit head on. So that part's pretty cool. As a song, it's not bad. It does feature, you know, we got Slash and Ozzy Osbourne on this. It's pretty enjoyable. And this was something I wasn't aware of, is the video for this is out there, and we'll include this in the blog post. So I'm guessing timing. I'd have to go back, but my guess is this album came out probably within a year or two after Sledgehammer came out by Peter Gabriel. And there was a very unique style that Peter Gabriel used for the Sledgehammer video. And you see similarities in the Hey Stoopid in terms of the kind of claymation, stop action stuff, and with the intermixing of live action. And so it's very reminiscent of the Sledgehammer video, with the exception that you have a young couple riding in a skull-shaped roller coaster car, which is unique to this, but the video is actually pretty cool. I like this song. This is this album's Poison. It's not as good as Poison. I like it. I think it's a good song, and I really like the video.
I've actually never seen the video for it, so now that you're bringing it up, that is something I'm going to have to go and check out. You mentioned that it has Slash on there, Ozzy's on there, and Joe Satriani's on it as well. In fact, he makes multiple appearances on this album. Was this the first collaboration with Slash? Because he's done quite a few.
Yeah, I think so. This is the first time Slash shows up now. We see him later on the album we mentioned about every show, Fistful of Alice. But we see Slash several times coming up in the future. But I believe this is his first appearance.
Yeah, because right around this time or right after this, a re-recording of Under My Wheels with Guns N' Roses appears on Guns N' Roses' Use Your Illusion album. On the live record, he's also on Along Came a Spider.
Yeah, and in some of the video stuff for Along Came a Spider as well.
I mean, there's at least 5 different albums where they appear together. This is the first. That's a notable thing about this record. It is, like you said, it is, you know, interesting to tackle something right out of the gate, like suicide as a topic for a song. When artists get into sort of like heavier issues like that, especially somebody like Alice Cooper is more shock oriented. What's your kind of initial reaction to that? Because you had mentioned, you brought up something really good where he was doing almost like a We Are the World type thing. I understand that something like We Are the World or the Do They Know It's Christmas Time song, which I believe are by the same people, right?
Geldof was definitely big in the Do They Know It's Christmas Time. It's all blurred to me. I can't tell you. I'm still recovering from the last episode.
You're still trying to get it back.
Yep.
But like those 2 songs as an example, I understand that those were message songs and they raised money for good causes, which is great. But those songs are garbage. So it's nice to hear a song that, you know, has a point that it's trying to make and getting other artists involved in the same way that isn't a terrible song. I'm not going to say this is great in Alice Cooper's canon. This is not, for me, not a contender to make it onto the playlist. But it's way, you know, if they were shooting for something in that range, they, in my opinion, hit higher than the mark that had already been set.
And I would think of this ilk, this is a stronger contender in it. The only other one I'd put up there is Ain't Gonna Play Sun City.
Yeah, I don't really have a problem with songs sort of like that. My problem with songs, especially the Do They Know It's Christmas Time song, my problem with stuff like that is like, that's a bad song. That's a song that when it comes on, not that I'm a big radio guy, but whenever I'm somewhere where it's on, I want to find that radio and turn it off. So this is, it's refreshing to kind of hear something that was done in a similar vein. Like you said, it's a message song. It has a lot of guest artists on it. So something that was clearly done in a similar vein, but done way better. So credit to Alice on that. That would bring us, though, to the second song, Love's a Loaded Gun. I believe that was a single off of this album, too, right?
Yes, it was. There are a couple of these. I mean, this album actually is pretty well represented in terms of videos. This one being a second one, Hey Stoopid. Other ones down the road. Feed My Frankenstein, I don't think, had a video initially, but then through other reasons, it did eventually start to get a video treatment. While we had kind of a message and a different point here with Hey Stoopid to begin with, teen suicide bad, suicide period bad, now we basically move back into trash territory from here on out, where it's just kind of thematically, again, we're kind of back to what was being covered in trash. Love's a Loaded Gun becomes the first entry into that race, and not one of the songs that I have a hard time recalling a lot about. It's not bad. It's not a bad song, but it's not one that I'm like, boy, I really want to hear that again soon.
Yeah, we're going to get into something here for me that you're going to hear me repeat a lot throughout the show. And I'm glad that I'm sort of taking the lead on this episode to give you a little bit more time to speak about these songs, because with trash, I find a lot of these songs really samey. A lot of them start to blur together. I do think that there are different peaks and valleys in this one. That trash, to me, just sort of hit a certain mark and maintain that all the way through. Like, there is a little bit more diversity in this, but thematically, once we get off of Hey Stoopid, we pretty much stay in the exact same lyrical reference point.
I'm not going to have tons of additional commentary on a lot of the other songs. A few, but I don't have, like I said, I don't have much more on Love's a Loaded Gun.
Well, yeah, I was going to say that brings us right to Snakebite, which I will say, Snakebite to me, my problem with Trash and Hey Stoopid is, specifically with Trash, really sounds like Alice doing guest vocals on a Desmond Child record. And even though this isn't a Desmond Child record per se, this still doesn't feel like an Alice record to me. I'm not a big fan of Snakebite as a song particularly, but it does sound a little bit more Alice than most of what we get on these two records. I don't know if it's his delivery or maybe some of the lyrical choices in it, but it just sounds a little bit more him than a lot of these songs do, or at least a little bit more of the Alice that we expect.
We're on the same page. I'd say it does. It really is, to some degree, a little bit Constrictor-ish in terms of you got a little bit of that deal, which is still kind of a different Alice sound, but this has more in common with Constrictor in terms of sound than it does with Trash.
Yeah, I agree with that. Which brings us right back to trash territory with Burning Our Bed.
Which sounds like a song the band Poison would sing to me, which is not a seal of approval for me. In terms of, so far, the songs on there I've been okay with. Hey Stoopid, I like. Snakebite's got its moments. This is the first one where I'm kind of like, this is best I can give is an okay. And I think it's because it sounds like Poison could do this song, and it would fit perfectly in a concert for them.
So it's funny that you say that, because as you may have figured out, typically when we do Squat Cobblers, I don't like to do a lot of preparation before the show. Rarely do I take notes for a show. In fact, the only, or at least one of the only non-Alice squats that I did a little bit of note or a little bit of preparation for was our previous episode. One of my notes for this one, because I re-listened to this one this morning, and one of my notes for this one was Poison, not the song.
Yep.
So you perfectly summed it up. So that brings us into Dangerous Tonight, which is a Desmond Child co-write.
Correct, it is. Nice intro. This song starts off actually really strong. It can kind of builds throughout in terms of, so it's one of the more, I guess I'll call it more of a rocker song on there, a little more power to it. Edge seems like, I don't know if I'm ready to give it edge, but it is a little stronger. Definitely started off very strong and an enjoyable song. And it is, it's Desmond, could have been on Trash. And as we talked about Trash last time we got together on Alice, Trash is a very well done, well produced album. It just lacks a little bit of that Alice Cooper flavoring that we like. And
in fact, I would say that, and nothing against Peter Collins, who produced this one, who's probably best known for producing Operation Mindcrime from Queensryche. Not a big Queensryche guy myself, but Operation Mindcrime is considered by a lot of people to be, one of the great of this era. So it's nothing against him, but I actually do think Trash is slightly better produced than this is, in the sense that sonically there's very little you can really pick at on Trash.
Fair.
Other than the fact it doesn't sound like an Alice Cooper record, which is a big problem when it's marketed as an Alice Cooper record, for me anyway. And that takes us to our very next Desmond Child co-written song, Might As Well Be on Mars.
Yeah, so this one's kind of, we've talked a little bit about the sameness that runs through Trash, and here it kind of continues on with Hey Stoopid. So this doesn't fall prey to that. So this is definitely different sonically to begin with, but for me, not different in a good way. I'm not a big fan on how the song starts out. As you get a little deeper in the song, I start to enjoy it a little bit more. Great title for it, but it kind of falls back in a little bit to the way I felt about some of the earlier songs, where it's just like, it's okay. But this is not one of my favorite songs on the album.
No, absolutely. It's definitely, more towards the bottom for me, but it does take us into easily my favorite song on the album, Feed My Frankenstein. What are your thoughts, sir?
So I've mentioned this on past shows that hearing the studio version of this, I liked the song, but I did not like it as much as I liked Teenage Frankenstein off of Constrictor. But having seen it live multiple times and having heard it live on a couple of different live albums, this song takes a life of its own. When it's played live, it's powerful. You've got Zodiac Mind Warp as one of the co-writers of this one, and this is a standout for me, because we're getting pretty much square back into true blue Alice Cooper territory here, and this is a great song. It shows up in Wayne's World. It's a fun set of lyrics, and it's fantastic live. So I'm a big fan of Feed My Frankenstein.
I'm a big fan of this song. So it's not like my favorite Alice Cooper song by any stretch of the imagination. And it's not a song that, particularly the studio version, was necessarily something that I went back to multiple times. The live version, and particularly the live version on Fistful of Alice, as we've said so many times, which is with Rob Zombie, I think is far, far superior to this studio version that's on here. But I do have a few things to say about it. One of the things you already hit on, live, this is an incredible song, and I don't just mean the recordings of it live. The actual experience of it live, which Kelly had mentioned, caused a little bit of an issue with the audio in the live recording that appears as one of the bonus tracks on Alice's most recent album, Paranormal. They have, the creature come out and do the last chorus and all that stuff. Live works fantastic. Didn't work as well. Go back and listen to our podcast on that to hear everything we have to say about that. But live, I think this is an incredible song, and that effect works so great, especially, to a large audience. If you see him in an arena or something like that, having this giant creature come out screaming the lyrics and all that stuff works really well for me. This is another song that's loaded up with guest artists. We have Joe Satriani and Steve Vai together on the same song. You have Nikki Sixx from Motley Crue. You have Elvira on this song. Are you an Elvira guy, Kelly?
Team Elvira, that's for sure. Also Team Stevie Vai. Always nice to really respect him as a guitarist. So this is loaded up pretty good. What I'm missing, and you'll have to help me on this, is, so what role did Elvira play on this song? What did she do?
I'm not entirely sure, to be honest with you. In going through the credits, I saw their name was on there, and I just get excited for anything that Cassandra Peterson is even vaguely associated with.
And prep for the show was the first time I came across that she was connected to the song. And that's actually where I knew Stevie Vai was one of the artists. I had assumed that he had guested on Hey Stoopid, but actually this is where he shows up. It's a good song.
It's a great song. I'm a huge Elvira fan, regardless of however much of a contribution she had to this song. Huge fan. Can't stress that enough. Cassandra Peterson's an amazing person. I've had the opportunity to meet her a couple of times. She's awesome. This is a fun song. As Kelly also mentioned, it appears in Wayne's World, which really, so when Wayne's World came out, I was a kid and really like the perfect age to appreciate that movie for what it was. So Alice in that movie was great because I was already an Alice Cooper fan. Because for anyone who hasn't seen the movie, that's really weird. First off, it's a big cultural landmark film, so go see it. But if you haven't seen Wayne's World, not only does the song doesn't just play in the movie, they go to an Alice concert and then meet Alice after the show. So he has like a little cameo in the movie, and it's a really funny scene. Coming off of Trash, and like I had already said, how it was really difficult for me to wrap my head around that being the same Alice Cooper. This kind of brought me back to it, like seeing the song in the context of Wayne's World, seeing sort of the funny scene with him afterwards. I was like, okay, this is Alice Cooper again. So this is really a big redeeming track for me on this album, and in large part because of its association with the movie.
Yeah, I think in combination, it really does kind of mark. He's returned. He's made his comeback into performing, fine-tuning a little bit of the sound, and then I think Freed by Frankenstein is the first indication of what's to come. You're going to start to get kind of the true blue Alice Cooper stuff. The movie kind of brings out some of the fun side of Alice as well. So it's very cool. I'd agree.
And that brings us to the next song, Hurricane Years. What are your thoughts, sir?
It's a rolling little number. Pretty unmemorable for me, though. I mean, there's nothing wrong with this song, but it's not one that sticks in my head.
This is really, the back half of this album presents a really big problem for me, because I kind of mentioned this on same thing with Trash again, and these albums are sort of a pairing. A lot of the songs on Trash, to me, really blend together. And this is where the album really starts to blend together for me, is kind of on the back half, because it's like a big build up to Feed My Frankenstein, which to me is the highlight of the album. And then is a lot of samey material on this record, particularly lyrically. There's a lot of samey material on here. This is where it kind of loses it for me, because there's a couple tracks, including this one, that I literally listened to today, and I barely remember them. And that's not a positive thing.
I would agree. All of a sudden, we get this breakthrough with Feed My Frankenstein, and you're like, yeah, okay. And then it kind of slides back in, and you get into that sameness again. For me, not the entire back leg of this album, but definitely the next three songs, starting with Hurricane Years, I don't really have a ton to say about them.
Then the next three, you really hit it. The next three songs, really, from Hurricane Years, you have Little by Little, Die for You. Like these are songs that are very samey. We have a lot of writers on these songs, which in a way is kind of almost problematic, because I feel like, we're seeing too much pulling away from the traditional Alice sound, and we need to kind of get back to traditional Alice. That's what I are kind of waiting for through these two records. You get a few more guest appearances, another Nikki Sixx writing credit. You have Mick Mars on Die for You. I personally don't have a whole lot to say about those tracks, though.
I mean, good drums, the start of Little by Little, but that's it. I think these three all kind of bleed together for me. There's not a lot unique to speak about.
Yeah, I mean, not only to say that they bleed together, but I listened to it this morning, and they're already bleeding together to me again. So none of this is terrible, but we need to get back to Alice. And Feed My Frankenstein, I kind of felt like we were building up to that, and then we didn't get there, at least not the way that I wanted to. And again, this was still a well-received record that sold strongly, but nowhere near the level that Trash did, which in a way is maybe a good thing, because we probably had this replicated more of the success that they had with Trash, we might have gotten more records like this instead of what came afterwards.
Yeah, I'm happy that this kind of closes off this chapter of Alice's approach, because there's some pretty fun stuff coming our way next.
Yeah, I just feel, and it's not even like I don't hate these two records. It's just I know what's coming up, and this, for me, and again, I know Trash was huge, but musically, for me, these two records just kind of feel like a detour.
Yeah, I would agree. They're not consistent. Again, we talk about there is a tremendous amount of diversity in the different sounds that Alice has produced. From when you go from a Flush the Fashion to the early Alice Cooper Group albums to you get a pretty Constrictor, a pretty wide diversity of stuff going on. These two albums hang together in a very kind of similar genre. It doesn't, to me, play to Alice's strengths as much in terms of the actual music on there. If this is the kind of music that you're very passionate about and enjoy, they're good executions of that, and there's nothing wrong. It's just in terms of where my tastes lie, it's just this particular genre is not high on my list, but they're well done. You get still some moments in it, but it's just, it is a detour, and the good news is we're about off the detour.
Yeah, and that's a really good point to make again, Kelly, is that these aren't bad albums. And if you're a fan of this particular blend of rock, then these are solid executions of that. And technically, there's not a whole lot to complain about on either of these records. But as an Alice Cooper fan, it just kind of feels almost like a minor speed bump along the way. They're not great. They're not terrible. They were just there. Trash was a big hit, so that's cool. So that brings us to Dirty Dreams.
Guilty pleasure for me. I like this song quite a bit. The harmonica's pretty cool. It's a fun song, playful delivery by Alice in terms of the singing on here. It's more memorable. I mean, this one does not bleed in. This cannot be confused with anything else on the album. It's still kind of in the same ballpark in terms of the bigger hairband sound to it, but it's starting to get grubbed up a little bit, as Alice might do. And outside of Feed My Frankenstein, it's probably my second favorite song. Well, third favorite, because we're going to come to the next one. But I like the song. I think it's pretty fun.
Yeah, I'm completely with you on this one because you and I really are on the same page with so many things, including our recommendations. I'm completely with you on this one. This is definitely a top 3 song for me.
Yeah, this was, if it's saying, hey, if you get Hey Stoopid, it's like you got to make sure, catch the title track, catch Feed My Frankenstein, and then, to me, catch these last 2 songs, with Dirty Dreams being the first of them.
Which brings us right into Wind Up Toy. I'm sure you have some stuff to say about this one, sir.
Not a ton beyond the fact I think it's, again, one of the stronger songs on this album. It does have more of a unique sound to it than some of the earlier parts of the album. This one, for some reason, there is a fairly large contingent of Alice Cooper fans that are gigantic fans of this song. There's a lot of passion for Wind Up Toy out there, and some folks are just, in terms of really holding this song up as one that people have as a favorite. I'm not sure I do that. I don't think Wind Up Toy is going to end up on my playlist, but it's a great song. I like it. It's a great way to finish this album off, and it does kind of nestle in with the smaller subset of songs I have on this album that I'd say, hey, if you get this album, or make sure you listen to this song off this album. It's a really strong finish, and I enjoy it.
Yeah, there really is a lot of love for this song out there.
Yeah, and I'm not sure why. I mean, it's, like I said, I like it. It's a good song, and there's a lot to like about it. But how it kind of jumps up into that short list of some of the songs that are people always say, oh yeah, this is it. This is, you want to know about Alice Cooper, listen to Wind Up Toy. There's some folks that are, I don't know what engenders that high level of passion. I do think it's a very good song though.
Yeah, I'm pretty much with you on that one. I don't 100% understand the undying love for it. It is a good song though. So I mean, if you're gonna love Alice Cooper, love whatever Alice Cooper songs you want, this is a great song. So we're gonna be largely in agreement with you on that. It's not a favorite for me though. It's not really a playlist contender for me either. It does play into the whole Steven plot line, if I'm correct.
I mean, there seems to be a connection, if not directly, thematically. Absolutely. This is, you're in, there are hints of the Steven world in Wind Up Toy, which is kind of cool too, because we haven't seen that in a while.
With the connections to the kind of Steven character and plot line, regardless of how intentional or if it just kind of lives in the same world as that's cool because it's a little bit of a callback. Although personally, I think we're going to get into better material that lives in that same world in the near future on our reviews.
Yep. I dare say on the next album.
Spoiler alert. And that's the last song on the proper album. Now, there is some stuff with this one. So Kelly and I came across during our research for this, because we thoroughly research everything we say on this show, obviously. We did come across that this was initially released with an entire bonus disc of 15 short tracks, and we can find images of this and listings for it in different places, but I couldn't find any audio that accompanies this bonus disc. So I'm not sure exactly what these tracks sound like. It seems like they're probably short spoken word things from Alice himself. My guess would be maybe this was something that was sent out to stores to promote the album, like to play in the store. You want to say particularly about that, Kelly, or did you want to read a couple of the track titles for our listeners?
So selectively I will. So yeah, my sense is that this was strictly promotional material, and how the world has changed in terms of how promotional material is put together. That this my guess is a CD that would have come with all the crisp new copies of Hey Stoopid for the record store to play or whatever in respect to that. And I'm assuming this is Alice reading fake news story. It's called Stupid News. And
so it's like if Alice worked for CNN.
Yeah, which is an interesting thing.
Actually, I would kind of love that. CNN, please hire Alice Cooper.
That'd be pretty sweet. So a couple, and I'm not going to read them all, but a couple of them include buying goats to watch them faint. A man paid $3,000 for being stinky, and hubby's ghost made me pregnant. Kind of National Enquirer-esque kind of stories read by Alice Cooper to support Hey Stoopid. Kind of a clever idea. Doesn't really tie to the album beyond the word stupid, which is a tenuous link at best, but it's kind of cool, and it would be lovely to actually find these somewhere. But Mike and I have both done a little bit of hunting, and they're not easily found. I'm sure they're out there somewhere, but probably maybe if we have a former record store owner who has a box full of old goodies that they had to there, they could dig through and find it and do everyone a favor and put it out someplace where we can hear it. That would be pretty cool.
Or at the very least, just send it to Kelly and I.
That'd be fair. Yeah, burn us a copy. That'd be sweet. And the other thing kind of related to this album was, like Trash, there were a number of songs that did not make it on there, larger than most, at least in terms of when they've identified them. If 4th Street Could Talk, My Love Is Your Prison, Underground, Chemical Reaction, It Rained All Night. Now, It Rained All Night actually did show up as a B-side on some things. And Take It Like a Woman, which is not the same Take It Like a Woman that shows up on Brutal Planet, apparently. So there's that.
Example where a few of these songs still remain unreleased.
Yep.
So, and as we mentioned, there's been a lot of Alice compilations and box sets and things like that have alternate tracks, B-sides, unreleased, at that time previously unreleased material. And a number of these songs have still not popped up.
Yeah, which maybe tells you something. And it was because a lot of the other minor, well, I don't know, because I think even on Paranormal, I think they came in with 25 songs and they pared it down to the best ones. So there may be a big stack from Paranormal sitting out there too that we'll hear about at some point.
Paranormal was such a good album. Go listen to Paranormal.
Yes, absolutely. All right, I think we
All
need
right,
to
Sarah, I was just going to say, is there anything else you want to add about Hey Stoopid?
Nope, I'm done.
All right, so I guess it's ranking time then, right?
We got a Pat Boone which is tough.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
I kind of think he'd do Wind Up Toy.
See that.
Much to the chagrin of Alice fans everywhere.
Yeah, I know. I'm going to throw you a little bit of a curveball here, though, and I'm going to say he'd do Feed My Frankenstein, dressed as Frankenstein's monster, as a really campy sort of Monster Mash style novelty song to come out around the holiday.
And kind of like eating burgers like Cookie Monster would eat cookies kind of thing to really ham it up. Yeah, I could see that. That's good. Yeah, I think either of those would be horrific. So good Pat Boone selection.
Yeah, and he'd be sitting there. I also like to picture him because I imagine that Pat Boone is the musical equivalent of a method actor. So in the studio recording it, he's wearing the full Frankenstein's monster garb, face painted green, big bolts glued to his neck, and he's reading the lyrics, and he gets to stuff like Fur Teacup and just dirt at the sheet.
Yeah, but I think he's going to stick the I ain't evil, I'm just good looking line. He's going to nail that.
He really, really would. All right, sir. So I guess it's time that we rank this thing.
Yep. I'm happy to go first on that. Last time we were together, we ranked Trash, and actually Trash ended up as number 15 on both Mike and my list. This is now we're on album 19. I like Hey Stoopid, even though Poison's an amazing song. Wonderful song. It gets outnumbered when you have on Hey Stoopid, Wind Up Toy, Dirty Dreams, Feed My Frankenstein, and Hey Stoopid. I just think it outpoints Trash. And then I go back to so if that would say, am I going to listen to Lace and Whiskey or Hey Stoopid next? And because with all its many flaws, I think I would listen to Lace and Whiskey before, just because of the diversity and the stronger presence of what I consider Alice proper. But this is not a bad album. Just kind of the same conversation we had with Trash. This is good stuff. It's got to end up somewhere on the list. And so it will actually now slide in as my new number 15 in between Lace and Whiskey and Trash.
Once again, Kelly, we're really very, very much on the same page. This is going to be my new number 15. I don't think there's a song that at its core is quite as well written, but I have to take into consideration that the version of Poison that I love is not the one that's on the studio record. It's the live recordings of it. Although I do think it's a great song, and there's nothing wrong with Trash, and I think Trash sounds slightly better in terms of production than this album. There's just more that I like on this album. There's slightly more diversity than there is on Trash, so this is my new number 15 as well.
There you go. I think we're going to start to, over the next few albums, see some, because we've been kind of landing almost in the exact same spot on a lot of these, but I think the rest of the ones it'll be interesting to see where some of them land, because there's a pretty wide variety of really good stuff coming up.
Yeah, there is, and I'm especially excited to get to Brutal Planet and Dragon Town.
They're not very far away. They're coming up.
No, they're not.
And we'll be back with some more Squat Cobbler and Alice reviews in the near future. So thanks for listening, everybody.
Thanks for listening, everyone.